Hello everyone. This time I'm starting with a new story. This is namely FIDIC. Uh, I'm not going to explain so much about FIDIC, and we will discuss about that in detail, hopefully during the time. Now I'm going to, as fast as possible, to read out one case number one, related to a dispute and the noticed conversation between the parties, correspondence between parties in this in this case. I will speak a bit faster. First of all, because of my English, I put everything on the paper to not to lose too much time. You can always reduce the speed of my speech and of my voice, and you can understand it better. So let's start. Case number one. Day number one. A contractor submitted a letter to the engineer with copy to an employer informing him or her about an unpredicted event on the site. Letter caption was "Notice according to GCC 412 due to unpredictable physical conditions." In the letter, contractor wrote that after removal certain overground structure, an unpredicted subground structure was founded onto which the superstructure was laid. Contractor stated that it was unpredicted obstacle according to SC 412 because the substructure in subject couldn't have been seen, visually detected, before superstructure removal, and that was impossible from the available documentation to foresee in the bidding time of a reparation such circumstances and effects it could cause. Contractor stated that it was going to continue with works in accordance with the SC 412 to the extent the ground real situation allows. Furthermore, contractor stated that the available drawings and BOQ at the tender time didn't contain this item and concluded that client obviously didn't have this in mind. Contractor also suggested control excavations to determine the conditions of the substructure for the aim of further procedure determination. Contractor stated that in accordance with local law, this circumstance was recorded in the construction diary. At the end of the letter notice, contractor asked for immediate response and instructions for further actions. Day number two. Engineer submitted to the contractor letter captured a reply to contractor's letter title, etc., number. Engineer stated that its colleagues are on the site on daily basis and available to inspect the superstructure removal works. She stated as well that there was no doubt about necessary removal of the superstructure to come to the certain level in centimeters, that's to say, to continue with execution and completion of permanent works. Engineer noted, however, that the main design had defined existence of the superstructure substructure in subject by giving also attachment from the main design. So it is not quite clear why would it be considered as unforeseeable circumstance encountered on the site. Engineer stated, nevertheless, she were ready to discuss this matter, also subject to the further substantiation. Attachment to the engineer's letter contained description of the substructure with its dimensions and execution method. Day 22. Contractor submitted a letter captured as contractor's reply on the engineer's letter. Number, etc. Contractor stated that it proceeded in accordance with subclause 412 because the method of founded substructure making differs from the technical description. Contractor claimed, namely, that the connection of the founded substructure to the superstructure was not clearly given in the drawings and could have been encountered only after removal of the overground construction elements. Contractor then wrote that she acted indirectly also in accordance with subclause 1.8 of GCC and informed engineer with its notice about non-compliance between contractual documents. Contractor furthermore stated that she expected much more urgent engineer's reaction and instead received some verbal comments that she is not entitled to any EOT and compensation without clear instruction. Further, constructor stated that she doesn't dispute the fact that the underground structure was mentioned in the technical description, but its removal wasn't transferred as a work operation in the BOQ, which was carefully read out by him here. Contractor namely claimed that there was no independent BOQ item for underground structure removal, repeating that its connection to the superstructure doesn't correspond to what given in the technical description. Contractor stated also that according to GCC, employer is responsible for drawings and contractor cannot be burdened because of any inconsistencies. His here obligation was to point out mistakes and not to bear the consequences. Furthermore, contractor mentioned subclause 1.5, according to which engineer must give instructions and clarifications in the case of documents inconsistencies and ambiguities. Contractor also stated that engineer was obliged to give instruction how to separate underground and overground structure by using his here obligation arising from subclause 3.3 engineer's instruction. Furthermore, contractor stated that in this case it is about a variation of permanent works in accordance with subclause 13.1 GCC, quoting thereafter the paragraphs of this subclause A, B, C, E, and FF as follows. We know all, but I am going to say A, change of the quantity, B, due to excavation in this case, change to the quality and characteristics of excavated material and connection between overground and underground structures. C, changes to the levels positions. In this case, encountered underground installation changes the level and position of excavation. E, any additional work planned. In this case, according to contractor, she needed special equipment to perform additional work allegedly. And F, changes to the sequence and timing to be able to perform permanent works, excavation obviously. Contractor had to spend time for removal of encountered structure. Contractor requested also immediate engineer's instruction to prevent disruption of other items execution and cause reduced dynamic of other works. Contractor gave maximum 7 days time to engineer to act by giving a clear instruction. By the giving instruction, she shall prepare analysis of performed works and their calculation to get a solid basis for objective and reasonable resolution of mutual interests. At the end, contractor stated, for the sake of caution and due to very short time and deadline for claim announcement, that letter should be considered as the notice in accordance with subclause 21 GCC. Day 28. Engineer sent a letter to the contractor captured the existing substructure element. Notice of claim. Engineer stated that the contractor released several arguments which conflict each other. Actually, the engineer is answering the letter which was captured in the way I said. First, a contractor claims that existing underground obstacle is not the same as described in the contract, but in the same time it refers to the missing BOQ item. It was for engineer irrelevant if the existing structure was well described in the contract if contractor claims the missing BOQ item. Second, contractor gave him here 7 days time to issue instruction by reference to its dynamic through engineer, so far received just contractor's drafted POW with a lot of lacking information and unprepared according to the contract. Sorry, I'm using the exact words that the parties used. Third, contractor's letter is prepared as notice of claim, although pursuant to available records, that's to say the site logbook, contractor wrote that works on underground structure removal started on day number 8, which means that contractor encountered the obstacle in subject earlier, hence the claim is time-barred. 4. Contractor mentions the removal of underground structure together with the overground superstructure element, though overground structure removal is indicated in the BOQ. Engineer stated that the contractor failed to explain duly why the removal of existing underground structure would be unforeseeable and thus subject to variation. Engineer also stated that the scope of works includes excavation up to the new subgrade level with its depth, which is under the encountered underground structure. That's to say, the underground structure is within the minimal planned excavation scope. Later, engineer gave explanation of the term unforeseeable as per subclause 1168 of GCC, so it is unlikely that experienced contractor could not foresee existence of the underground structure which has to be removed during the excavation work, stating that removal of underground structure is part of the contractual work scope. Engineer agreed that there is no BOQ item describing removal of underground structure, but costs thereof should have been included in contractor's tender price, since the work is within the contractual scope. Engineer mentioned then contract agreement letter of tender, subclause 14 of GCC, subclause 411, GCC and BOQ preamble content. Engineer allowed a possible discussion about difference between encountered underground structure description in the contract and the real condition found during excavation. She stated that it could be subject to further substantiation. Sorry if my English is not quite well. But the mere fact of missing BOQ item doesn't entitle contractor to additional compensation in accordance with contract. Engineer concluded this letter stating that any instruction is unnecessary since the removal of the underground structure is already part of the general obligations prescribed in subclause 4.1 of GCC, asking contractor to continue with works and inform him here of any doubt or question. Day 49. Contractor submitted a letter to engineer titled Reply to Engineer's Letter blah 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 and substantiation of notice to claim additional works and extension of time for completion. In the local language, contractor clearly stated payment of additional works and EOT. Contractor confirmed a receipt of engineer's answer and in accordance with subclause 21 GCC paragraph 3 submitted the answer. Contractor commented engineer's statements by citing provisions of FRB 1999, stating again that item in question was omitted in the contract BOQ and understanding that engineer considers this item as included in some other unit price. Contractor stated that engineer should know that its employer obligation or engineers it's to prepare investment and technical documentation on the basis of which contractor performs the works, which also includes all working positions for which the contractor should give appropriate unit prices. Since there was no respective BOQ item, contractor asked, was it mistake of experienced contractor or experienced employer or engineer? Contractor stated also that therefore FIDIC GCC foreseen error or omission possibility in the investment technical documents, tender repeating the subclause 1.8 and citing its content. Contractor stated that parties agreed about missing BOQ item and just cannot agree how to solve the problem. Furthermore, contractor stated that the missing BOQ item could have been a mistake, but also an intentional omission. If the omission was made deliberately, that would mean unjust enrichment according to governing law. It is a fraud in accordance with the country's criminal law. However, contractor proceeded from assumption which doesn't have to be true that it was not deliberate error or omission of the employer and or engineer as BOQ author. Contractor proposed two ways of the case solution. The first one, the issue of variation according to subclause 18.1 and approve new unit price through engineer's determination in accordance with subclause 3.5. The second, to reject contractor's proposal and issue decision in accordance to 3.5 subclause, which will lead contractor to the initiation of a dispute and to the arbitration or court proceeding. As letter attachment, contractor submitted, as per him here, detailed analysis of the unit price for additional work, and she proposed the unit price and gave one textual calculation and also one tabular presentation of works, material and equipment, blah, 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 cost, including the overheads and profit. In this calculation, contractor calculated the scope of additional work for removal of underground structure and deducted the scope of the excavation works which were not executed on the place of the underground structure. Contractor saw this as his here variation order proposal according to subclause 13.1 para E of GCC. At the end, contractor stated that if engineer rejects contractor's proposal of the variation issue, she shall initiate claim procedure in accordance with contract, whereby actual costs stated in variation order proposal shall be increased by arbitration costs of witnesses, experts, consultants, lawyers, etc., etc. Until the issue or possible dispute is resolved, she shall keep records of performed works and deliver them to engineer for control and verification. Furthermore, contractor also mentioned that additional works slows down works performance regarding the contracted excavation item, which will require extension of agreed deadline for the work's completion. About that, she shall inform engineer after choosing the way in which this dispute shall be resolved. Contractor stated that compromise is better than arbitration or litigation, but decision is up to the engineer, and in the absence of a solution, engineers should consider this letter as supplement to already announced claim in accordance to subclause 21 GCC. Contractor suggested meeting for some days and time to discuss the issue in a reasonable way, letting engineer the possibility to propose another time and place. Day 64. Engineer answered to the contractor letter about after 15 days by a letter titled Existing Underground Structure, stated that she didn't find any solid argument that would change his position regarding the valuation of the existing underground structure, and retains by the last letter sent on day 28. Engineer, however, replied on new allegations from the contractor's letter. Firstly, stated that the reference to subclause 1.8 of the GCC is irrelevant. Now, it's irrelevant as the matter raised is purely of financial and not tactical nature. Contractor wants a new item in the BOQ. Engineer disregarded with allegations that the problem arises out because of flawed tender documents preparation, since the contract is very clear regarding the matter of subject and contractor had plenty of chances to object, but she didn't do it. Engineer mentioned also her letter sent on day 63 related to some other potential dispute. Engineer reminded that pursuant to some governing law and its specific article, the contract provisions are applied as worded, asking contractor to double-check the way she made a full commitment to execute the works, which undoubtedly includes removal of underground structure in subject, and after more than 500 days after the commencement date, attempts to increase contract value by claiming that this item was unforeseeable and omitted. Contractors referring to the criminal law, engineer explained as helpless attempts to intimidate employer and engineer, and so to negotiate a price increase. Engineer stated that also false accusations are a criminal act under the law. Engineer commented contractors' upcoming information about the way of EOT request depending on the way how this matter shall be solved, by stating that this remains a mystery. Why would such request be different as in any event? Contractor is either entitled to EOT or not, irrespective how this or similar matter would be resolved as a variation or as a claim. Engineer concluded that it was not actually about EOT, but just about price increase, and EOT would be claimed if contractor would be not satisfied with engineer's reply. Ultimately, engineer replied to the meeting request, stating that contractor obviously has forgotten the meeting held on the day 31, I don't know about that meeting, when it was agreed that the contractor shall analyze if and to which extent the underground structure was unforeseeable by reference to the information given in the main design. According to engineer, for some reason, contractor decided to disregard the mentioned meeting conclusions and consequently forced his initial request, according to which the whole matter was unforeseeable. Like the meeting had never happened, contractor invited engineer to another meeting to discuss the matter in a way she have seen it. Engineer concluded that the only contractor's interest was to make a case under subclause 13.4 4.12, sorry, of GCC based on completely unsubstantiated price breakdown enclosed in the last letter. Engineer confirmed that contractor is entitled to pursue with her initial claim, but in that case, engineer finds any meeting on the subject matter as unnecessary, particularly because contractor attempts to organize it by deviating from the previous agreement and uses the wording which is as the best, say, unfriendly. Day 70. Contractor submitted a letter to engineer. Expressed surprise by the engineers claiming the BOQ item omission is financial issue and therefore irrelevant, by stating that BOQ is part of tender contractual documentation prepared by employer. Refer to subclause 1.5 paragraph J of PCC, so it had to be subject to the SC 1.8. Contractor gave some comments about engineer's behavior in general, stated that she didn't have desire to enter into polemic with engineer about who knows better FIDIC governing law and criminal laws, expressed surprise about engineer's lack of experience in managing such projects, gave objection regarding engineer's failure to act in accordance with subclause 3.6 GCC determination, most probably 5, GCC determination, etc. At the end, contractor stated that she would treat engineer's reply as negative decision in accordance with subclause 3.5 of GCC and shall in shortest period submit claim for additional time and costs about removal of underground structure. But contract again, and at the end, contractor in the end wrote that this doesn't mean that the engineer is not obliged to resolve the dispute in accordance with subclause 3.5, followed by detailed explanation at this subclause, which that subclause requires. Day 71, the very first next day, contractor submitted claim. Contractor submitted claim titled Additional Works for Demolition and Disposal of Underground Structure. Contractor referred to its notice of claim dated on the day of and to the subclause 21 of GCC, stating that she is submitting her temporary claim regarding significant additional works on the removal of underground structure, requesting additional X days prolongation of the time for completion. Contractor calculated additional indirect costs in the Epsilon amount. Furthermore, contractor noted that the costs of additional work were not subject of the main contract and were submitted and specified by the contractor in her proposal for variation order, gave retrospective of the correspondence between engineer and contractor, which was more or less a repetition of this already mentioned letter contents, stated among others that in accordance with subclause 3.5, claiming engineer ungiven determination, she has the right to claim through Article 2021. In this claim summary chapter, contractor stated that it was about a temporary claim and the real value will be determined based on executed and measured quantities. So this claim was marked as temporary, and after completion of the works on underground structure, the actual quantities shall be measured and final claim made. Contractor gave one detailed presentation of events, how, where and when she encountered an underground structure, claiming that this wasn't part of the drawings and wasn't given in the BOQ, but reduced the quantity of the contractor excavation works. Contractor gave a list of important events, correspondence and records. As basis for the claim, contractor mentioned the subclauses 21, 13.1, 3.5, 17.3, employer's risk, 17.4, consequences of employer's risk, and 12.12. 12.2 method of measurement. Contractor gave some analysis referring to the contracted POW for excavation works which were stopped by the existing underground structure, stated that critical part for underground structure was on its breaking and crushing, so to say. At the end, contractor gave some tables showing the planned duration for excavation works as part of the contract and duration of excavation works, including the removal of underground structure. In the costs analysis, contractor asked for additional costs on the underground structure removal and additional indirect costs due to EOT for completion for X days, and she gave breakdown calculation of additional costs based on the machine costs, the time spent on the underground structure removal, etc., and indirect costs calculated in the following way. He took the total contract amount stating percentage of calculated indirect cost. In this way, contractor came to the total indirect cost for the project. This amount divided with the total number of days for completion according to contract and came to the daily indirect cost amount. This daily amount contractor multiplied with number of days for the completion time extension she found it to be entitled to, and came to the indirect cost amount. These were then added to the indirect costs and the total claim amount given. Claims exhibits were more or less already mentioned correspondence between contractor and engineer. Day 112. If I'm interrupted, don't worry. I will continue anytime. Engineer submitted initial response on the claim validity in accordance with the subclause 21. Engineer submitted letter titled reply to contractor's letter blah 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 submission letter. Engineer confirmed the receipt of a contractor's letter. Through the claim was submitted and gave initial response of the claim validity in accordance with subclause 21. Asked contractor to look carefully at her initial response and to provide the feedback by the reference to the conclusion made therein. Submitted a rather large document with many project general and details from the tender stage, base date, giving better to say, citing number of contract related documents, including particular conditions, even engineers and contractors' obligations arising from general conditions. Also, plenty of documentation. It took almost half of the response document scope. In the second half, engineer gave comments to the contractor's approach regarding delay and cost analysis, gave a lot of comments, mostly arising actually from the written correspondence, which took the previous 111 days, and in the conclusion wrote the contractor claim is devoid to merit. Underground structure was encountered during constructed and in BOQ given excavation works, therefore is not unforeseeable. Contractor had to include all costs of the execution. So to include the removal of underground structure costs into the excavation works in unit price, didn't follow provisions from SC 4.1, 4.10, 4.11, 12.2, and didn't consider the BOQ preamble provision related to the type of measurement, didn't provide evidence showing the excavation works, which were according to contractor slowed down by the underground structure, were on the critical path, didn't present baseline and updated the POW, and without these details, any assessment of UT was impossible. Asked contractor why the S subclause 12.3 provisions to prove the necessity of the new rate to be derived from some other similar work contained in the BOQ, and also asked further supporting documents in substantiation of the direct and indirect costs since the analysis and proofs given in the contractor's claim were insufficient. Contractor just asked for certain indirect cost percentage without a proper calculation. It's maybe to note that engineer didn't clearly state that the claim is rejected. The question is if the sentence, the contractor's claim is devoid of merit, could be interpreted as claim rejection. This is my remark. Or the role engineer of document title is initial response. Is their initial response could be treated as at all as a valid engineer's decision about claim acceptance or rejection, since the term initial response is given only in 2017 in FIDIC edition, as far as I know, but for quite a different purpose. Day 187, contractor replied to engineer initial response, blah blah blah. Contractor reply comes 25 days after engineer initial response, and contractor continues to argue with engineer about these things, same things, gave the new chronology of the whole story. That's so that again, contractors emphasize engineers' unprofessional project management, stating that the engineer, through interpretation, number of clauses and subclauses, just is trying to cover up the whole damage he caused to the project and is avoiding to solve the problem or to give his precise determination. Accusations, different type. Day 143, engineer is answered to contractor's letter by the letter titled reply to subcontractor's letter. In this response, engineer gave again and again the respective events, date when claim was submitted on the date 22, fully detailed claim submitted date 71. I really don't know. Initial engineer's response submitted to day 112, contractors replied 137, and blah blah blah. From this perspective, engineer concluded and stated that he may proceed to agree or determine this matter in line with subclause 3.5 and in conjunction with subclause 21. Engineer invited contractor to the consultation meeting and proposed date and time, leaving contractor possibility to propose another term. Day 160, and I'm finished. engineers submitted notice of the engineer's determination in the matter of contractor's claim for underground structure removal. Here is just to know that engineers submitted a very large document, bilingual, at almost 1,000 pages. More than 50% of the document are the copies of contracts, documents, and above given correspondence, but the determination itself was more or less the same as in engineer initial response. Let's think about. I will be back soon with my analysis, many of them which will take 8 to 10 minutes time, and let's learn FIDIC in this way, not only red one. Yours sincerely, as always, Jamak. Bye, and have a nice time.